Over the past 20 to 30 years, there has been an explosion in science and knowledge about the impact of adversity and trauma. Some of this knowledge has come from returning combat veterans who came back from war theaters. Again, for hundreds of years we've known that they come back with symptoms that are intrusive and disabling. More recently, we have learned from victims of sexual violence that these effects are pervasive and disruptive. The symptoms I'm talking about include what we think about as post-traumatic stress disorder, but include a broader range of symptoms, including depression. And so what are these symptoms? Well, they include hypervigilance, this sense of jumpiness. The common anecdote is a combat veteran who's returned will hear a car backfire and will hit the ground because there's this sort of feeling of unsafety. Depression is common. Absolute avoidance of any interaction, staying in the house, not going out, not using public transportation. There are intrusive symptoms like nightmares and flashbacks, and the sense that you're transported back to the fearful event in a moment. Many young people are unable to sleep after their injuries. There's generalized anxiety. And another symptom that's less often talked about, which is emotional numbing, the complete inability to feel. Now, this was most clearly taught to me by a young man named David. David had gotten together with his cousin one day, and they had gotten in the car and gone to the projects near them to visit some girls. Someone walked up on the car and fired on the car. David was injured, but his cousin, who was his best friend, was killed. David was there to see the attempted resuscitation. He was there to be grilled by the police officers about who had done this. He was taken to a different hospital from his cousin and only learned the news of his cousin's death on the news. When I met David and I talked to him some 6 weeks after this had happened, David explained to me that he was absolutely unable to feel fear, that the sensation of fear had left him in a phenomenon we often refer to as dissociation, the separation of feeling from its appropriate setting. And David said it this way. He said, a lot of things that made me scared or made me nervous, they don't scare me anymore. They don't affect me. Like if a bunch of guys were looking at me mean, I used to be nervous, but now it doesn't even affect me. I'm like, what? He said, it's like they took some of the feeling I had. It's like I have a little stone in my heart now. Think about this for a young man who lives in the inner city, who relies upon his sense of fear and anxiety to keep him out of danger. David had lost that. So young people who have these symptoms often believe that they're going crazy. And part of the burden for this lies at the medical system feet. We fail to explain to young people what we know as the normal aftermath of trauma. And so young people are sent back out into the community, often with extreme symptoms of trauma. Now, you may or may not realize, but only about 1 in 10 victims of violence who comes to the emergency department gets admitted to the hospital. 9 times out of 10, these young people will be patched up and sent back out within hours of the time that they were injured. So these young people take actions to try and keep themselves safe or to treat their own symptoms. So some say they're going to move away down south to be with family. But a number of young people explain to me that they begin to smoke marijuana to satisfy and to take away their nightmares and their symptoms of stress and trauma. Some begin to confront their fear in an attempt to overcome it, like David, who had lost his sense of feeling. But some young people turn to weapons. And if you interview young people who have weapons, they will very commonly say to you, I got this for protection. So that's what happens to patients who have this status. But what happens to the providers? Doctors and nurses seeing these young people with these emotionless faces often conclude that these young people have no empathy, or that they have no regard for life, or that they are guilty of something that led to their own injury. And so instead of responding in a healing way, we often respond by blaming the victim. And blaming the victim makes the trauma symptoms worse. It's a vicious circle, and we're part of it.